Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Blue Collar Game Day Week 3 edition. Now, I do want to point out something really quick, or a couple things really quick, before anybody else points it out for me. First of all, Steve, not here today. He's unfortunately got work. We miss him. We wish him the best at his job today, especially in that bad weather. Second of all, yes, it is 10 a.m. I have a friend in town. I have to go see him before. For those of you who understand Jewish holidays a little bit, it's Yom Kippur tonight. I have Yom Kippur stuff to do, but I got to go see my friend first. So we're running this show a little early so I can go get brunch. Yeah. So without further ado, as you can tell, I am slightly off my game this morning. That has a little something to do with the cold that I'm dealing with, and a little something to do with the 4 hours of sleep that I got. So let's dive into some game picks. So the first game that I guess we should go into, I'm going by Vegas Insider, so whichever games that they have listed. Um, I guess we have to look at the God damn, will you load, please? Yes, the Chargers Vikings game. So, looking at this game right now, I just want to make sure I have the right injury report. Eric Kendricks is out. Austin Eckler is out. Joey Bosa is questionable with a hamstring injury. On the Minnesota side of things, the starting center Garrett Bradbury is questionable with a back injury, and Marcus Davenport is out. Both of these teams are 0-2. Both lost both of their games by one possession. I don't have an official play on this game. Gonna put that out there right now. I came into this really, really wanting to bet the Chargers, and I mean really wanting to bet the Chargers. I just can't do it. Tannehill is better against man defense than he is against zone. The Chargers run a ton of man defense. The Chargers run defense. I still don't believe in, and sorry, not run defense, pass defense. I still don't see. I'm off my game. Their pass defense, I still don't believe in. And they were pretty much torched in their last 2 weeks in the air. I don't see how the Vikings don't take advantage of that. They don't run the ball very much at all. They throw the ball a lot. Justin Jefferson's going to have a field day today. On the other side of things, however, see, I'm telling you, a lot of shit going on here. The Chargers, the Vikings are blitzing a ton so far this season. They have run the least man coverage of the year of any team this year, and they've blitzed second most under Brian Flores. So under a team that normally runs a lot of ran a lot of zone last year or a lot of man last year, now running a lot of zone. It's just it's interesting for me to see because I know the Vikings have just an absolutely awful, awful run defense, and Justin Herbert is the guy I should have meant, not Ryan Tannehill. Justin Herbert is pretty okay with giving that ball away so far in the first couple of games. Josh Kelly has taken a big leap, and I do think that people look at last game against the Titans and think, "Oh, that running game the first time was a fluke." I don't think it was. The Titans have the best run defense in the NFL. I think Josh Kelly comes out swinging in this game against a bad run defense in Minnesota. I think he's a good shout for DFS plays, fantasy plays, whatever you want to do. So I like the over in that game, but the reason I didn't have an official play on it was because I missed 2.5 points of line movement. You don't want to miss that. Justin Herbert against zone coverage last year kind of struggled, but at the same time, he was second in completion percentage under pressure. Brian Flores has been setting the house. There's just a lot of different factors in this game that I'm not a fan of. Gun to my head, who am I taking this one? I'm taking the Vikings for the game pick, but my favorite play of this one would still be the over. Also, apologies for the gross sounds coming out of my face right now. Second game, and the reason I said Ryan Tannehill the first time, is the Titans and the Browns. This line is about 3.5. Totals at 38.5. Also, a key thing that we're going to see throughout the day we're going to see a lot of low totals. This is a terrible week for weather. It's the tropical storm, hurricane, whatever you want to call it, running through town. A lot of wind, a lot of rain. It's just not great for these quarterbacks. So it's going to be a lot on the run game. It's going to be a lot on the third down stops. And I don't necessarily know if I trust Cleveland here in this situation. Last week, Tennessee pulled out a close victory against the Chargers in the home opener. Now they're traveling to Cleveland. It's going to be windy and humid. And a lot of this game's going to come down to the run. The Browns were the worst run defense in the NFL last year. Now, they did bring in Dalvin Tomlinson, who wasn't a great run defender last year, but has been one this year. They brought in Zadarius Smith, who was a good run defender last year. But their best run defender last year was Jadeveon Clowney. He's gone. Grant Delpit was the second. He has to come down from safety. Myles Garrett has to come off the edge to do it. The guys in the middle, Jordan Elliott and Dalvin Tomlinson, are not good at stopping the run. Now, Derrick Henry has had some trouble breaking some tackles this year. If you look at his break tackle percentage, it's actually down to 2.5%, which is really crazily low for him. Usually, I think his lowest year was 9.6%. I think that number's got to come up at some point soon, and I think this would be a good game for that to happen. Last year, 9% of Dalvin Tomlinson's tackles were broken, 12 or 13% of Jordan Elliott's tackles were broken. So you have a situation here where essentially the guys up the middle are not doing too hot. The Browns' run game is in the I don't want to say in the mud, but you're missing Jack Conklin on the tackle. You're missing Nick Chubb. I don't necessarily like it for them. The Titans run a lot of zone. Deshaun Watson this year has had a 50.3 passer rating versus zone. That's not good. Last year, he wasn't good either. He seems to have a lot of trouble dissecting it, especially against pressure. This Titans front is going to be able to get pressure even if they only run 4. And the weather really does play in the Titans' favor. I worry more about the Browns' ability to move the ball without passing against the Titans' run defense than I do about the Titans' ability to move the ball without passing against the Browns' run defense. I think that the Titans also have a coaching advantage. I think that although Jim Schwartz has been blitzing a lot, that actually doesn't hurt Tannehill. He's better under pressure. So when he does throw the ball, I think he's going to have more openings and he's going to be able to get rid of the ball quickly enough. One more thing I want to point out. The Browns have played 2 teams this year. They're both top 4 in personnel consistency, meaning that they run a similar personnel group almost every time. Now, it varies, obviously. Like, they don't run the same group every time, but similar for the most part. That allows the defense to be prepared for 1 or 2 formations that will be the main focus for the entire game. The Titans are 18th in that category. The Browns are going to have to deal with a lot more variety in their personnel grouping than we've seen in the last couple games. I wonder if that exposes some weaknesses for them as well, especially with injuries in the secondary like Greg Newsome. I have the Titans plus 3.5 here for a unit and a half. I also have the Titans money line for a half unit, which is quite funny considering how much I love betting against the Titans. I've now bet on them 2 weeks straight. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. You kind of got to play the matchups the way they lie. And the way that the weather is playing in this one as well really makes me like the Titans. Now, I will be careful because the number is at 3.5. I think, yeah, it's still at 3.5. Vegas is okay with it being at 3.5. That's never a great sign, so be cautious. But I like the analysis there for myself. I do. Next game is the Texans-Jags. Now, I don't have any official pick on this game either. In terms of covering the spread, this just kind of seems like I guess I could take the Jaguars at -7. The 7.5 I don't like, but there is -7 available at some books, or only really at PointsBet, which I hate. But the 7 I can deal with, I guess. Derek Stingley is out for Houston. There are some injuries on their side. Um, I am worried about the Jaguars' pass defense kind of holding up against CJ Stroud. I understand they did great against Patrick Mahomes last week. That kind of felt like a game that they prepared all offseason for, and B, just a better situation for them working against a guy who struggles in zone against zone coverage in Kelsey's first game back. I think that CJ Stroud is better against zone coverage than he is against first man. At least that's what it looked like in his time in college. It's what Ohio State prepared him for. So I do think that the Texans do have a shot at covering this spread for sure. I think Derek Stingley being out does really hurt. I think that let Calvin Ridley kind of run wild on that sideline. And Ridley got 2 receptions on 8 targets last week. They're going to keep trying to get him the ball, and I think they're going to succeed more doing so this week. Being at home helps the Jaguars this week, especially after almost pulling off that home win against the Chiefs last week. I really I think that the Jaguars can pull this off. I don't really have a play on it because I hate divisional spreads at this margin, especially when I'm not as anti-Texans as a lot of people are. I like Stroud. I like the defense. But with that being said, if I had to, got to make a pick on every game here. I'll go tight. Jaguars -7. Next game, we got the Jets and the Patriots. Now, I'm actually going to take a second here to double check the injury report. Last night at about 3 or 4 a.m., there were several key players still listed as questionable for Bill Belichick. I imagine that's still the same, but I want to make sure I have the right info before I give that out. Check the ESPN fantasy reports. And now we wait for them to load. Okay. New England Patriots. Yeah, they still have Cole Strange, Mike Onwenu, and Christian Barmore all questionable. That's a big deal for me, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And I can't believe that I'm about to do this on a show that Steve has so graciously let me run. Steve, I'm sorry if you see this, if you're watching this. I'm going with the Jets. Not only am I going with the Jets to take the points, I think the Jets can win this game outright. I think a lot of things have to go the Jets' way to win this game, but I think they're all going to. So it's going to be a disgusting game. It's going to be crazy wind. There's going to be over 20 miles an hour. It's going to be rainy. The Northeast is being hit by this tropical storm. Last year, these two teams played a very, very similar type of game. Marcus Jones ended up returning a punt for a touchdown. And it was, I believe, 10-3. I think that was the score. Anyway, Marcus Jones is not playing in this game now. He has a shoulder injury. Jonathan Jones, another corner, out for this game with an ankle injury. That's not the biggest thing, honestly. If Christian Barmore is out, that's much bigger for me. And because of what I said earlier in the Titans-Browns game, weather really changes how you have to look at these things. I'm looking at this now from a running and stopping the run perspective. And the Jets have a better offensive running game and a better defensive running game. Now, Ramondre Stevenson is good against stacked boxes. I anticipate a lot of stacked boxes in this game, seeing as, it's going to be rainy and wet. Most teams are going to say, you're going to dare you to throw the ball. But while the Patriots did play against the Eagles, and I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt there, they faced the Dolphins, who are not a great run offense, and the Dolphins kind of ran the ball all over them a little bit. The Jets have this 16-game losing streak against the Patriots. Nobody expects them to break that now. I kind of think that makes it the perfect spot for them to do it now. It's still on their mind. Just because nobody expects them to do it now doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it. I think the team that wins this game straight up is just the team that makes the least mistakes, runs the ball the best, and stops the run the best. The Jets have been the most disciplined team in the league in terms of taking penalties and penalty yards. I just think that this is a really ugly punt it back and forth game. One big run does it. I trust Breece Hall to break that big run more than I kind of trust Ramondre Stevenson in this, let's face it, anemic Patriots offense right now. I like the Jets, and I like the under 36.5. I know it's low, but there's a reason it's low. I think this game is like I really don't see how either team gets to 20 here. Like, unless there are fumbles before the 50, I don't get it. But yeah. So that's my take there. We're going to move on to the Saints Packers game. Now, spoiler alert, I do not have an official play on one side or the other. I could not make up my mind. But I have one of my favorite anytime touchdown plays of the year. Let me break it down. Last year, Andy Dalton, who was the quarterback of the Saints, if you remember, threw to his tight end 10th most in the league. Saints have the same offensive coordinator, run the same scheme. The height of the safeties and the corners for the Packers: Darnell Savage, 5'11", Rudy Ford, 6 feet, Jair Alexander, 5'10", Russell Douglas, 6'2", Keyshawn Nixon, 5'10". Juwan Johnson, 6'4", 231. And I know what you're thinking, that's great. But why stop there? Why stop there? When on the Saints roster, there is a 6'7", 265-pound former basketball player that has made a career of out jumping and bodying people in the end zone. Now, I know you're thinking Jimmy Graham has not played a single snap. And if he has, he hasn't gotten targeted. Why? Why now? Foster Moreau is injured. He's out for the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints run 12 personnel a third of the time. That means 33% of the time they need a second tight end out there. They don't have another one besides Jimmy Graham. He is going to be out there on the field. I expect Jimmy Graham to take that role of the red zone threat, primarily because they already also lost Jamal Williams. So you now get to a situation where your two red zone threats are Taysom Hill and Jimmy Graham. We're going to hit both of them. When Darren Waller played last year, he got at least one target in the red zone in 6 of his 8 games with Derek Carr. Carr likes to go to the tight end of these spots. If the Saints split Jimmy Graham out to the side against the DB, I don't know what the Packers plan on doing, but I know that the Saints did not bring this guy pretty much out of retirement for no reason. I think we see why he's acquired here, and I think he's incredibly underpriced considering the lack of goal line options that New Orleans has. And if it isn't him, it's going to be Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill's the guy that's taken most of the carries since Jamal Williams went down, not Tony Jones Jr., even though he got the 2 touchdowns last week. Hill has a better touchdown price than Tony Jones does, 240 versus 265. So Vegas thinks that Taysom Hill's more likely to score than Tony Jones is. And I'm adding Taysom Hill because the Packers have an awful run defense. This game is being played in Lambeau. There is going to be weather involved. So if the Saints don't want to throw the ball to Jimmy Graham, then they're going to run it. And if they're running it up the middle at the goal line, I am almost positive it is going to be Taysom Hill instead of Tony Jones Jr. With that in mind, the picks: Jimmy Graham, anytime touchdown, 12 plus 1,200, 0.5 units. Jimmy Graham, first touchdown, plus 6,000, 0.2 units. Taysom Hill, anytime touchdown, plus 240, 0.5 units. Now, I know this is game picks, so I got to pick a winner. And I know you're thinking that after I pick a bunch of Saints touchdowns that I have to pick the Saints. I can't. Derek Carr in this bad weather does not feel right to me. Even though they have the good goal line running game, I don't think the running game is going to be able to be consistent throughout, like down the field. It seems like an ugly game to me. But when in doubt, I'm going to take the Packers at home in Lambeau. I just feel like that's the smart move against Derek Carr in bad weather on the road. I could be wrong. That's why I'm not playing a specific side there. But I do think that if the Saints get that goal line opportunity, we are getting one of those 2 touchdowns for sure. For sure. You can quote me on that. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm lying, I'm crying. As I forgot who said it, but as someone said. Now, the next game is disgusting. And frankly, I'm appalled that we have to look at it. I say this every week about the Denver Broncos games, and every week it rings true. I mean, last week that game against the Commanders kind of stunk. Oh, actually, that's not true. It was a great game, but from a betting perspective, it stunk. We ended up cashing Commanders plus 4.5. We ended up losing Commanders Broncos under. It was 35-33 because, of course, it was. But here is what I'm confused about in this Denver Miami game. One thing, the total is 47.5. Denver's had totals of 39 and 43 in their previous two games. And this one it's up to 47. Clearly, their offense is expected to put up better numbers, even though it's the first road game of the season and the home opener for the Dolphins. The line opened at 7. It's down to 5.5 or 6 and 6.5. It's really curious to me. So, even though I think the Dolphins should win this game and should cover this game handily, I'm going to move with the line movement, and I'm going to say that the Broncos cover the 6.5. I know that I said 5.5, 6, 6.5. That's because you can find those lines across the board. That's why line shopping is so important. And right now, yeah, you can get 6.5 is gone. You can get 6 at Bet Rivers. I think that just based on the way this line and total is moving and set, I'll take the Broncos to cover. Even though I absolutely have no faith in that pick. Give me 1 second to blow my nose. I'm going to mute myself because that is not cool. When they look back at the stream in a couple of years, they're going to look back at this like the flu game after the Jimmy Graham call. That's what I'll say. The next game, Buffalo, Washington. Another 5.5, 6, 6.5, where you can kind of get a different line anywhere. Totals at 43. Now, both teams come into this game very healthy. But I will say, despite records, Buffalo, 4th in EPA per play. Washington, 16th. This is on offense. On defense, Buffalo, 9th in EPA per play allowed. Washington, 11th. Couple things here. If you like total trends, I'm never a guy that's going to base one bet solely on a trend. But when the Commanders are coming off of 2 straight wins since 2020, the under is 9-0-1. Going back to 2018, the number is 11-1-1. When the Bills are on the road versus non-divisional opponents since 2018, that under is 16-11. It's also going to be rainy. It's also going to have wind gusts. Josh Allen and the Bills have never played at FedEx Field before. So if you like the under, play it. I'm not stopping you. The Bills are facing Jack Del Rio, and that's kind of the crux of this bet for me. In 2021, Josh Allen played against Washington, where Jack Del Rio was the defensive coordinator. He threw 32 for 43 for 358 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Now, I know that the Washington secondary has gotten a little better since then, obviously. But it's clear that he does well against Jack Del Rio's scheme. And Jack Del Rio is not a guy that switches up his scheme per game. He knows what he does, and he sticks with it, win or lose. Now, the Bills have been great at keeping Josh Allen protected so far this year. And he's faced a lot of man defense so far this year, but now he faces a team that's run the 10th least man defense and has the 8th highest passer rating allowed in zone. So Allen can dice up man or zone. His deep ball is most effective versus the zone, and that's important here because Washington's already allowed 2 deep touchdown passes this season and only 6 deep pass attempts, which is a vulnerability you do not want to have against the Buffalo Bills. Now, the run game is going to be important. As I said, the weather is going to impact every game on the East Coast. Bills have not had a great run defense so far, but they have played against Breece Hall and they have played against Josh Jacobs. I love Brian Robinson. I love everything he's done, but he's not in that category. Now, the Bills run the 6th most man defense in the league this year because they have Trey White back. Now, this is bad for Sam Howell. He's a worse pass rating versus man than he does versus zone. One thing I think people are not taking into account. This is an Eric Bieniemy-led offense. If there's any team outside of the AFC West that has meticulously studied what was done by the enemy in Kansas City. It is the Buffalo Bills, who tried everything to take him down. Now they're facing him when he has a weaker roster. I think they absolutely pounce. I think Josh Allen has a great game. I'm going with the Bills -6. Um, I don't like to. I just don't like to take a big favorite with an under. It seems like you really have a narrow margin for error. So unless I really feel like I nailed the game, I don't do it. Not doing it here. So we're going to leave the under alone. That being said, if that's something you want to do instead, more power to you. I am not here to stop you whatsoever. Moving on. Jesus, tons of 1 o'clock games. We got Atlanta and Detroit. Atlanta and Detroit. Now, same thing. I got to check some injuries, make sure they're the same as last night. They should be because I don't think any injury reports have really come out yet. Yeah, Akuda and Patterson are both still questionable for Atlanta. On Detroit's side, they are, yeah, we're still questionable on Amon-Ra St. Brown and Josh Reynolds, but Amon-Ra is good to go according to some reports. Give me 1 second. I really do want to apologize to all my viewers. I'm not trying to make this a hard stream to watch by any means. I'm just dealing with some stuff as we switch from fall into summer. I have a lot of bad allergies. Let's see if that helps clear things up. So, Falcons have run the most man defense this year of any team, 70% of the time. Jared Goff this year, 121.2 man passer rating. Last season, 104.6, much better versus zone in both. Versus man this year, Amon-Ra St. Brown gives his QB a 146.7 passer rating. Last year, when targeted in man, it was a 117.3. I don't want to even wait to the end of the end of the game to tell you this. He's scoring a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown is 150% scoring a touchdown today. That's probably my favorite one of the day in terms of who I think is most likely to hit. The Falcons are playing their first road game of the season. In other words, the first real big road test of Desmond Ritter's real starting career. The Lions defense has been less than impressive in the first couple weeks, but they did play the Chiefs in Arrowhead week 1 and week 2. They played a vengeful Seahawks team that was humiliated at home in week 1 and fought them to the end. The Falcon team is not as good as either of these teams, as well coached as either of those teams, and they're in a much different spot. They're coming off 2 wins. They feel confident, and the Lions are missing some players in their secondary. It's just, I don't necessarily. Matt Collins is a good downfield weapon, but there are not that many downfield weapons for the Falcons compared to on the Chiefs. Everyone's a downfield weapon. Mahomes will create out of structure for anybody. On the Seahawks, you have Lockett, you have Metcalf. The good news also is even with the secondary injuries for the Lions, Cam Sutton is a strong defender. I don't have any real worries about him taking on some big roles, especially when it comes to Drake London. If Jeff Okudah can't play, that leaves Trey Flowers starting for the Falcons. He has been one of the worst pass defenders in the league so far this year in the time that Okudah has not been playing. He's allowed 13 yards and a reception. Now, in terms of replacements on the Lions side, they're replacing their right guard with Graham Glasgow. I really like it. It could be a lot worse. Jared Goff going against this man defense, I really like. And the Falcons' defense has just been way better than they are. They're 8th in points per game allowed, 3rd in yards per game allowed, 4th in yards per play allowed, and 11th and 3rd down conversion percentage allowed, as well as 2nd in yards per pass allowed. They have played Bryce Young and Jordan Love. Nothing bad I'm saying about either of them. But Young was in his first career game. Love was facing man defense, missing his star receiver and his best receiving running back on the road. The fact of the matter is, I just don't think their defense is built like this. What's more reflective of it is their 27th rank in sack percentage and their run defense number, which is 23rd in yards per rush allowed. Detroit's run defense has been strong so far, even though they already allowed 37 points the Seahawks last week. They held Kenneth Walker to 2.5 yards a carry. Now, I don't think they can do the same against Bijan and Algier in a game where the Falcons are so strictly on the run. But I think that they could do a better job than the Packers and the Panthers could, who happen to be two not good run defenses. Um, the Lions have been running more zone than man this year. Yeah. And I expect that to continue this game since Ritter is excelling against man coverage right now, and the Lions are allowing the highest passer rating in zone coverage. So while I am not happy that they're staying in zone, they have played against Patrick Mahomes and Geno Smith. Now they're going against Desmond Ritter. I'm once again not saying anything wrong about him, just saying there are levels to this. Um, Also, not a stat, just a feeling. I feel like the team that's going to take this game with more ferocity and intensity is the Lions. I haven't really seen the Falcons attack their games. I mean, maybe the Panthers game, but I mean, it's also the Panthers. They stink. I know the Lions are going to try to establish control as quickly as possible at home, coming off of a loss. I don't think the defensive coordinator for the Falcons is going to be able to keep up with the stylings of Ben Johnson. Jameer Gibbs getting more involved actually is better, obviously, for the Lions. Um, and if Akuda doesn't play, I really think Jared Goff has himself a day. I, I remember that last season in the 3 games that this Lions team played in following a loss, they allowed 9, 14, and 10 points all at home. Even with a battered secondary, the difference in the units between these two teams is not that far apart, except Jesse Bates. I'll give Jesse Bates a lot of love and a lot of credit because he is that good for the Falcons. Lastly, the Lions are 11th in pressure percentage, and for as good as the Falcons are in run blocking, they've been bad at pass blocking. Aiden Hutchinson's going to get himself a sack. Atlanta's also gotten themselves penalized 77 yards a game so far this year. At some point, that has to come back and bite them in the ass. Detroit's a team that can match them on the ground and can beat them in the air. I like their defensive rebound, their defense rebounding after allowing 37 last week. Last year, when the Lions were coming off a game with which they allowed 30 points or more, they were 4-1 straight up and against the spread. They allowed over 20 points just one time. I'm sorry, just twice. They didn't allow over 30 at all. I like Detroit in this spot. They can pick Atlanta apart, send them on their way with some humble pie. I just don't think Atlanta's going to be able to score with them. And if they I think their pass protected issues really are going to hold them back, especially with their penalty issues. So we have 1.5 units on Lions -3, and we have a half unit on Amon-Ra St. Brown anytime touchdown at +115. One more game, I believe, in the 1 o'clock slate. And I'm going to warn you guys right now, I have no official picks on the 4 o'clocks. I really don't. But we have the Colts and the Ravens. The line's around 7.5, 8, 8.5. Since 2023, the total is 43, 40 and a half. 43, 43 and a half. Since 2020, the Ravens are 6-2 against the spread when they are home favorites of 8 or more. When it's before week 10, they're 3-0. The under is also 3-0 in these games. And in the original spot, it is 6-2. Now, one thing I've been consistent to point out is that I think that this Colts team has the worst set of starting quarters in the league. Dallas Flowers and I forgot what's his name. See, I am really losing myself right now. I think his last name is Baker. Yeah, Baker. Real bad on the other side as well. Now, there are a lot of injuries for the Ravens, which is kind of holding me off on betting them. But the main crux of this bet for me is that I think the Colts are going to score more than people think, but not really enough. I also think the Ravens are going to score maybe a little less than people think. This weather is hitting Baltimore too. Since 2019, when the Ravens are at home with a total of 44 below, the under is 8-1-1. When you add to it that they're a favorite of 5 or more, that becomes a perfect 6-0 for the under. The Colts are great at stopping the run. They have DeForest Buckner. They have Grover Stewart, I believe his name is, right? And if not, there is another guy there who I'm forgetting, who I have his name written down, but I, of course, cannot remember. So, as the fact that the Colts are probably going to run a lot less no huddle in this game than they have in the first 2 games is also a factor for me. They have a new center. They have a new quarterback. I think they change up the game plan. The Ravens have dominated these types of games in the past. They haven't allowed a team to score more than 9 points in this trend spot since 2020 when the Giants scored 13. And there's a lot of money coming in on the over, and the line's still moving down. I don't really pay that much attention to it, but when you see a reverse line movement, you kind of got to note it at least. The Colts also run strictly zone coverage. Last year, Lamar was better versus man than he was versus zone. Um, I like guys like Zay Flower to break man coverage, zone coverage, not so much. Michael Pittman is really the only acceptable receiver on the side of Indy right now. I think Josh Downs is good, but needs to work his way in there a little bit. Um, and the last thing I really wanted to point out was the Colts' right side is really, really good at run blocking, and they're all healthy. The left side of the Ravens defense is not necessarily good at run stopping. So I think the Colts might be able to hold on to the ball a little longer than people are assuming, giving the Ravens less chance to obviously run up scores. I have the under 43.5 here at minus 110 for a unit. Um, and that is actually my last official play. As we move on to the 4 o'clock games, I'll give you some analysis here and there, but I really do not have much. I'll give away a bonus prize picks lineup I have at the end. Um, but Carolina, Seattle. Seattle got embarrassed at home in their last game. Sorry, not the last game, their first game at home. They had to sneak out an overtime win against the Lions on the road, a team that they've dominated historically. So I'm not too high on how the Seahawks have been playing recently. And while I would like to bet against the Panthers in this spot with Bryce Young there, Andy Dalton's there. And Andy Dalton is a guy who is capable of winning a game at quarterback. It's not like he is, inept and a bad backup and one of those guys where the offense will just stall immediately. He can have one of those games. And there's a level of uncertainty that hits me during these games, especially when he's facing a bad defense, of like, how much am I really willing to risk on a hunch of how Andy Dalton may or may not play? And I know that's how you kind of look at every game, but the fact of the matter is most guys have more of a sample size with their roster than Andy Dalton does with this one. So I'm staying away from this game, both line and total. I don't know how many points the Panthers are going to score. It's kind of a key factor when you look at it. So once again, it's game picks. So I'll take one side or the other for the sake of it. I'll take the Panthers to cover the 5. It's gross, but it just kind of seems like the way it's trending in my head. And my leans that I haven't ended up playing have ended up going pretty solid so far. So I might branch out a little bit and put them on the game picks here. Next game, 425, Dallas versus Arizona. 12.5, 13-point spread. I'm currently trying to see if I have the stones to bet the Cardinals at plus 13. Because I know they haven't played the two best teams in the league. They played the Commanders, they played the Giants. Now they played other NFC's team. Probably a better one. Not probably, definitely a better one. But Josh Dobbs has been solid in the face of pressure so far. It seems like that offense is kind of schemed to design their plays away from the pressure when it comes. But more importantly, Trayvon Diggs being out for this Dallas defense, I feel like it's really going to hurt them in week one. Week one without him, that is. They're on the road. They've been dominating first 2 games by the Giants, by the Jets in New York. Now you have to fly across the country. It just kind of seems like a little bit of a trap game. Who does Dallas have next? I think they have the Eagles after this. I could be wrong. But if they have the Eagles after this, I think I might have to nut up on this show right now and take them. Okay, no, they have the Patriots next week. But they're back home. By the end of this show, you might see me take the Cardinals. I'm really kind of feeling it. Without Trayvon Diggs, I think that corner secondary area kind of gets exposed. I understand Micah Parsons is going to get a lot of pressure, but Dobbs has actually been good at creating out of structure, and I don't know how these corners can handle the Cardinals receivers out of structure when we get to the point of regression, which is the Cowboys are not this good. They played two questionable teams and they've dominated them. But I don't think they're the team that's going to dominate everybody by 30 every week. And some of that starts with playing down to competition in games you shouldn't. This game kind of has that written all over it for me. Um, and yeah, I really don't want to take the Cardinals, but for the sake of game picks, I'm definitely going to. So I think the Cardinals cover. Um, I really want to just like say that they win, just to be crazy, but I don't think that they do. Maybe in some world they can do that, but I don't know. I just don't know. We're gonna move on. We got the Bears and the Chiefs. 12.5 point spread, 48.5 point total. Man, this is another game where it's just like I don't want to take anything because the total's up at 48.5, right? Unless they're expecting it to be a 37, a 36 to 12 type of game, like, and they're not because it's not, 12.5 point spread. 48.5 is a high total. They're expecting the Bears to score points. And with that in mind, with how good the Chiefs defense has looked, there's just a lot of caution for me on this end. Are the Bears just going to come out and score 20 points inexplicably? Is it? I feel like it's going to be one of those games. And if it's one of those games, I am not participating. I will not be dragged in. Now, if it gets to a point where the Bears are up by like 10 points in the first half, if I get a live line of the Chiefs, am I absolutely nailing it? 100%. I just, man, I don't like the way that this line is heading. I don't like the way that it's sitting. I don't like the way the total is sitting. Um, and if you look at some injury report stuff for the Chiefs, I'm going to pull this up right now. I mean, I would pull it up if I knew that K came before L. Yeah, Willie Gay is questionable at the linebacker spot. Nick Bolton is out at the linebacker spot. They're kind of weakened in that middle area, which is really crucial for stopping the run. The Bears kind of thrive on that run game, and I think they're going to be going back to it a lot more this week than they have in the past. So, ah, I'm still going to take the Chiefs minus 12.5. I have to. Bears pass defense is just atrocious. Their everything defense is just atrocious. I think the Chiefs end up getting it done. But this total up high should set off alarm bells for you if it doesn't. So I don't want to say a little lesson because that's definitely, it is what it is. But a little something we can learn there about kind of judging the line on surface value. The nightcap, the Steelers at the Raiders. This game's total is sit at 43.5. The Raiders are currently favored by 2.5. I know he's on the road. I know the Steelers have looked awful recently, but, big but, Mike Tomlin is good in primetime. The Steelers find ways to win in primetime. Josh McDaniels is a bad head coach. Jimmy Garoppolo is not that much better than Kenny Pickett is. The big advantage is the wide receiver room, obviously. I'm probably not going to have anything in this game again, as I said. But for the purposes of game picks, if I'm looking at this game and I'm deciding who I trust more in this spot, yes, I know Najee Harris has been god awful. Yes, I know that Kenny Pickett has been pretty bad. I know the defense saved their ass last game. I know they got murdered in week 1. But the Raiders, they beat the Broncos by 1. A Broncos team that lost to the Commanders. They lost to the Bills by a ton. I just don't see what they've done to be favored in this game besides be at home. And I don't know if home field advantage is worth 2.5 points for the Las Vegas Raiders right now. I don't know if they've accrued that kind of fan base in Vegas, especially with losing Derek Carr and the trouble with Josh Jacobs and the franchise tag this year. I just I don't know why. I think this game should be closer to a pick 'em, and because of that, I'm going to take the Steelers at plus 2.5. Although, if you could find them at 3, boy, would that be fantastic. And you can. Breaking news: you can now find them at 3, pretty much everywhere. So that was a move from last night to tonight. Because of that, I will definitely be taking the Steelers now, giving me that field goal worth of room. They're going to play it close in prime time. They always do. Whether they win it or don't, I cannot and will not say, but I do think that the Pittsburgh Steelers pull that off. Now, before I get out of here and get myself ready to go to brunch and possibly cough up a lung the way I'm sounding, I have a prize picks entry for you guys. This is a 6-leg play. Feel free to take as many or as few legs of it as you want. This is just, I like all of these plays, and I'll explain why I like all these plays. So the first one, Javonte Williams over 49.5 rushing yards. The Miami Dolphins are a bad running defense. I also think that the big playability of the Dolphins is going to put the ball in the Broncos' hand a lot more. And as I said, the total in this game kind of indicates to me that they think that the Denver Broncos are going to score points. If the Denver Broncos are going to score points, the way to do it right now against this Miami team is to run the football. Also, if you want to keep the ball out of the hands of the most dangerous offense in the NFL, what do? You run the football. I think Javonte Williams breaks a couple decently sized chunk gains today to get us over 49.5 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown over 75.5 rushing plus receiving yards. I think he's got a great matchup against Atlanta here. I do like the AJ Terrell, don't get it twisted, but I don't think he's going to play shadow. I think they're going to be motioning Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot. And Amon-Ra St. Brown just kills man coverage. Jared Goff kills man coverage. I think this line is too low. I think he breaks 100 with a touchdown today. Jeffrey Simmons, over 3.5 tackles plus assists. This game is being played in terrible weather in Cleveland. Cleveland is going to run the ball, trying to get the game into rhythm for Deshaun Watson and for Jerome Ford. Jeffrey Simmons is going to plug up that middle. Now, I know that he's mostly a pass rusher, but he can still stop the run just fine. And with Danico Autry possibly missing some time today, Jeffrey Simmons has to step up in that department. The game script favors it, and his ability, I do not doubt whatsoever. Thomas Morstead over 5 punts. This is a Jets team versus a Patriots team that punted like 8 times in their game last year. The weather's just as bad. The quarterbacks are just as bad. I do think that the Jets are going to score maybe once or twice, but the fact of the matter is with as many 3-and-outs as I think they're going to be in this game with the weather and with the lack of offensive production, I really like Morstead to punt the ball 6 or 7 times. The Jets can still easily win the game with that happening. I think it does happen that way. And for what it's worth, he's a good punter. I think he booms a couple of them down, keeps them in good field position. Derrick Henry, more than 17.5 rush attempts. This is kind of off the similar vibe of Jeffrey Simmons. Same game, same weather, same scheme. It's the running up the middle that I'm looking at here. Derrick Henry is going to get a lot of carries in this game. I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, the Browns' run defense up the middle was atrocious. The Titans should try to emphasize the run in a game where the weather is absolutely billowing wind. The only way I don't see this hitting is if the Browns completely control time of possession, which I don't see happening against their Tennessee run defense that is so far this year. And lastly, Zach Wilson, less than 16.5 pass completions. Once again, weather, big factor. I just really don't think that he gets to that number. Like, I don't know why. 16.5 is still a high number for a guy playing in what will be rain and heavy wind in a run-heavy script. I understand they're going to throw the ball a decent amount with how many 3-and-outs they're going to be. I still don't care. Under 16.5 receptions, completions. that is it for me for Blue Collar Game Day. I'd like to thank Steve for having me host solo for the first time. It takes some trust to allow me to do that, and I apologize for two things. First of all, having a cold during it, and second of all, picking against your Patriots and picking the Jets to do that. I understand that that's a problem. I will take my reprimanding after the show. But for now, thank you everybody for tuning in or who's tuning in the future. I know this early stream might not make it for everybody, but I appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate everyone watching. And let's go make some money today. I really think Jimmy Graham is going to be the guy to do it for us. And let's get it done. I'm really happy with the slate that we've come up with. I don't like a lot of the lines, but I like what we've found in these lines. Finding the value is always important. I think we've done that. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be back here next week, hopefully with Steve. Let's have a great football Sunday.